Welcome.
Thank you.
It should be the other way around because you're going to be the host.
Welcome, Nick.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm here to talk about myself for the next hour, so buckle up.
Let's interview you. All right, okay. Let's just get rolling here. What do we have behind us?
This is my project truck. My sons and I built this thing together about 2 years ago now, and this was something that we were just starting to get our YouTube channel off the ground, and we needed a project to work on every weekend to put out content. And this was kind of something that we just came up with the idea literally on one weekend. Like, what if we did this? What if we did that? And it all worked out. So this is a 1979 Ford F-150 Custom, and it is sitting on a 2005 Ford Crown Victoria Police Interceptor.
Okay, so let's get into that right away.
Yeah.
How'd you do that? Because you didn't swap the front, and
Yep, it's not a front clip from a cop car, and it's not even just laying the body. It's not just a body swap. We cut the floor out of the truck, and we cut everything off of the Crown Victoria except the firewall on the floor. So everything about this thing is Crown Victoria, front to back, top to bottom. The wiring, engine, transmission, chassis, HVAC system, the floor is all still Crown Victoria. And so step by step through the whole video, we cut out sections of it in order for it to fit the F-150 as we lowered it down on top of that Crown Vic, and then stitched it all together.
Where'd you get the truck?
Facebook Marketplace.
Okay.
It was like one night one of the boys found it, and we paid, I think, $450 for it, and we trailered it home. The engine was locked up. It was an original 300 cubic inch inline six with a 4-speed manual. And the rotted out parts on the truck happened to be the floor that we were cutting out anyway, so it really didn't matter. It had a title, and it had good glass. That's the main things we were after. It was a long bed, and then we shortened it up to be able to match the wheelbase.
Where'd you shorten it?
Shorten it in the front.
Okay.
Yeah. So we cut the front of the box in order to shorten it there. I didn't really want any weld seams and things like that, so I cut it at the mating part at the front of the box. So,
cool. Where'd you get the Vic?
The Crown Vic was a friend of one of my sons at our church, and I believe I paid $600 for that.
And that was obviously a runner.
Yeah, it was a runner, had a title.
Sure.
Yep. And so the truck is still titled as the Ford F-150.
Oh.
I still had the VIN. I still have the title for the Crown Vic, but I was debating, like, how do I title this, or how do I license it?
Can
how
it go either way? Can you title it as the Vic?
Probably.
Or what's
gray area? I don't.
Okay.
I didn't check into the legalness of it, but I thought, if I get pulled over, I don't want to try and explain to an officer, like, technically it's actually a Crown Vic underneath. If they see a pickup, they pull over a pickup, it should say on my insurance card and my...
Good point.
Yeah, so I was like, yeah.
I've run into that.
So that's why when we found the truck on Facebook, it was like, it should have a title.
Nice. What was the most difficult part? I watched the videos.
Okay.
Was it getting the right matte look? Because I watched that video where you sprayed it and then wiped it all off.
We made a lot of mistakes through the whole thing.
Legitimately, what was the most difficult part of the whole project?
That's a good question. The most difficult part, I think, was when we were cutting apart the Crown Victoria and knowing how much to take off and don't take too much, because we were still trying to figure out how are the firewalls going to line up. And we made a very conscious decision to keep the dash of the pickup the original dash of the truck. I didn't want a Crown Victoria interior, because I've seen guys do that. The inspiration for this project came from watching other YouTubers. I'm not the first to do this by any means, but I watched a guy called Nathan's Garage on YouTube, and he's done a couple of these swaps, and he left the interior and the dash all Crown Victoria. And you can do it that way, but I didn't want to do it that way. So that was probably the trickiest part of the whole project, was knowing how much of the Crown Victoria to take off. We took the Crown Vic dash out, but we had to leave the HVAC case, brakes, steering column, all that stuff is laying on the floor of the car, and then you're lowering the truck on top of it, and then you have to reattach all the Crown Vic stuff up into the dash of this truck. So retrofitting Crown Vic to fit under a F-150
How was
dash.
that? That'd be hard.
Gets tricky, yeah. So there's some home-built janky welds that I'm not proud of that are in this thing, but they're kind of hidden enough that it wasn't too bad. If you open up the door and you look, you can see about 9 inches of rocker, and we had to fabricate that. We had to make that. So I went to the scrapyard and just bought what I thought would maybe work and hope for the best, and it worked out.
So you, what's that called where you lower it over the frame?
Body drop.
Okay.
We body dropped
So we
it.
did that.
Yep. So that was part of what we wanted to do on this. Is it still rides at stock height for a Crown Vic, but then we could make the truck look as low as we wanted
Sure.
to. Yep.
And here's a question. Is your gas tank hooked up yet?
No, that's why it smells so strong in here. Like, we're all getting high on the fumes in my truck. No, the truck is actually only about 80% done. Interior's not finished.
And you're driving it where, when?
I'm driving it to Louisville, Kentucky in 2 weeks.
Nice.
So, yeah. It'll be the biggest road trip it's been on so far. But I have about 5,000 miles on this thing already in the last 2 years. So, yeah, I need to finish, like, my filler neck. I have it so that it's supposed to come up through the wood floor of the box of the truck, but
Right.
it's not yet. So I still am just at a gas station, reaching my arm through the filler door,
Yeah,
and it looks hilarious.
Yeah,
I have to be on my hands and knees to fuel it.
So what about the bed? I'm curious. It's wood.
Yeah. Yep.
Not very functional because not very deep.
No, it's not functional. It's kind of strong-ish. I mean, you can stand in it, but we had to make a decision. We were either going to leave the steel floor of the box and make the hump like most people do, because it's being Crown Vic, that suspension has to come up into the bed of the truck, so you lose a lot of floor space doing that. So you're either going to have low, high, low in your bed floor, or I just decided to make it all one level. So there's definitely some wasted space underneath the truck.
But it's not functioning. It's not like a work truck where you need to be putting tools in it.
I don't haul hardly
Right.
anything with it. I drive it daily, but no, it's really just more decorative in the back of the truck anyway. So yeah, the wood itself was sourced from a buddy's grain truck. The wood came from a 1955, maybe 57, I don't remember, grain truck. And this was the sides of the wood box on that thing. And so, yeah, it was just laying around out in the elements. I love the patina of it. So I braced up what I was going to have for the structure of the floor, and then used green treated, like pressure treated wood that you would build a deck out of.
Sure.
Because it was cheap. So I just went to Lowe's, bought what I needed to, just laid it in there, and basically kind of created my own palette in a way underneath, just doing it crossways, both directions, to give it some strength, and then just laid the vintage wood on top of that. And then it's got a couple coats of varnish or clear coat or whatever, just to try and preserve it. So,
All right. How about the wheels? I saw you rattle can those.
I did.
So where'd those come from?
The wheels on this thing are from a newer Crown Victoria, also found on Facebook Marketplace, and they I believe they fit the Ford Explorer and the all-wheel drive Ford Taurus.
Okay.
Police Interceptors.
I like them.
Thanks.
I don't like fancy, like they look stock. You know what I mean? Like they're not.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we were going for. I was taking a chance on the color, but I thought, well, if it's somewhere in the range of browns and creams and off-white
That's
and
what
things
it is.
like that.
It's brown.
Yep.
It's cream.
Yep.
I can't
That's
tell.
what it is. Colorblind. Yeah.
I'll go with you.
So, yeah, and we just rattle canned them, and we actually had to open up the center of that wheel hub so that it would fit the older
okay.
Crown Vic. So I had to take them to a machine shop.
All right.
I paid more for the machining of the wheels than I
That's
did for
funny.
the wheels
That's
themselves.
funny.
But yeah, so they're 18s.
Yep. Roll bar. Functional.
Yeah.
Scared of dying.
Well-
Holding the car together. What's the...
Kind of a little bit of everything.
Okay.
We were at that stage of the build where I wasn't really planning on doing that. It wasn't part of the budget of the build, and I thought, I've always wanted to have something Dukes of Hazzard style that has a roll bar in it, because I think that's cool. And as I was raising and lowering the Crown Victoria frame and chassis and things like that on the hoist during the project, you could see how much any vehicle flexes. I mean, I'm a mechanic, so you can see that every day when I'm at work, how much a pickup truck actually sags on a hoist as you start to lift it. But it's even more prevalent when you're building something and you have cross bracing holding your cab together and things like that, and you're trying to make measurements, and you see it changes 3/4 of an inch when you're up in the air versus on the floor. So I thought, the more we can do to structurally make this more strong, let's do it. And I'd seen other guys that did projects like this that strengthened up the hump in the frame that Crown Victorias have. It's kind of known as being one of their weak spots anyway.
Sure.
So I thought, let's do it. I had access to a pipe bender of a friend's, and I'm friends with a guy that builds roll cages for race cars, like dirt track stuff.
There you go.
I'm like, it'd be kind of stupid. This is my chance. So I scraped together about $200, went to the steel place in Dodge Center and bought the tubing that we needed. I decided to just clear coat it. Once it was done and welded in, I wanted to just leave it kind of that raw steel look. So it's just clear coat over the top of it. But
like it.
They're not my welds. I can't take credit for the welds on the roll bar. My good friend and my employer, Brett, did the welds on that.
Nice.
So, yeah. And there's a little bit of all 4 of my sons have some piece of this project. My daughter did a little bit with me of refinishing the seats in it. My dad did some welds on it. My brother did some welds on it. So
Family project.
Yeah, it really was. And that's why it's fun to drive it every day and then to be working on it still and see like, oh, yep, I remember that day. I remember who did that.
That's cool.
It's part of the fun of a project like that.
So you named it.
Yeah.
What's its name?
I named it Curtis Lowe.
Why?
Well, I'm a Leonard Skinner fan, and that's probably my favorite Leonard Skinner tune is the Ballad of Curtis Lowe. And I just decided to leave the E off of L-O-W-E and just keep it L-O-W, Curtis Lowe.
I got it, because it sits low.
It sits low.
I got
exactly.
it. Exactly.
That's where it came from.
So you built a rat rod for Rat to It. You named that one too.
We did. Yep.
What was that?
We're a family that tends to name all of our vehicles,
sure,
whether they're cool or not.
Yep.
Everything in the driveway has a name, and so that one is named Lester, and that one's name came from the town of Lester, Iowa, where we bought the cab for
nice.
that rat rod.
Okay.
And so they kind of name themselves in a way, but they're usually an old man or an old woman name. My oldest son, Jacob, his project car is a 82 Cutlass 4-door. It's kind of a sleeper car, and he bought it from a lady named Rosie. And so that's Rosie. The car's name is Rosie because that was the name on the title. So
that's funny.
Yeah. So sometimes they're female names, sometimes they're male, but typically they're kind of a vintage name. So
it's like naming
Curtis
a boat.
Lester. Yeah, exactly. It comes to you.
I think that's only a car person thing.
I think so.
Like,
too.
there's no way you're gonna go up to someone like, "Hey, that's a Prius. What'd you name it?" Like, that's not gonna happen.
Right. And we get ideas like that from people that we try and emulate a little bit, like the guys down in Florida at the Freedom Factory. They name all their projects and stuff like that. So we aren't original to naming our projects, but
I like it. I've ridden in it.
Thanks.
It's fun.
Thanks.
I can't wait to go out and see it do a burnout. Okay, so this is not your only build. You built a rat rod.
We did.
Yep. You've also built other cars. Go down the line. What have you gone through? And then we'll get to your very first car. Leave that one for last.
Oh, okay.
Let's work backwards.
So when I was newly married and a young dad, I kind of wanted to get into racing. I've liked racing my whole life. So some of my first actual builds weren't street legal. They were just...
Are we talking circle?
Yeah, circle track, dirt track kind of stuff. And I liked the fact that you could take a cheap street car and just turn it into a race car because that was the cheapest way. I really admired the guys that had a purpose-built race car that was like a modified or something like that, but I couldn't afford it. So to get into Hornet racing, it's just a front-wheel drive 4-cylinder car, and you put a roll cage in it and you beef it up. Actually, I should back up. The first thing I did was demolition derby, and I had a F-150. It was a 1989, and I was working at a dealership at the time. We took it in on trade, and it only had first gear and reverse. And I'm like, that's all
perfect.
You need, right? That's all I need.
need.
So I talked to to the store manager, and I said, hey, would you guys mind sponsoring me? I'd like to go to the county fair and do my first demolition derby. They have a pickup truck section that's only trucks, like you're not against cars and stuff like that. It's only pickups. And like,
is there a reason for that?
The trucks can hit a little harder because they're full frame.
Oh, sure.
You know, you're not against front-wheel drive cars and stuff like
Okay.
that. So, yeah. But there's rules to all that stuff. Like, they can't be four-wheel drive. They have to be two-wheel drive pickups. And this one happened to be a two-wheel drive pickup. So that was my first foray into anything motorsports at all.
Really?
Demolition
okay.
derby.
So when did you get into, what would you call it? Leisure or toy? Like street-worthy
Street
cars.
stuff.
Yeah.
It probably started with motorcycles, too.
All right.
Again, the entry price was pretty good for me, and I didn't have a whole lot of garage space. So
Two wheels fits better than four.
Mm-hmm,
I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. And so dirt bikes growing up and things like that. But I built my first street bike into a cafe racer.
Oh, nice.
That was a 78 Honda CB550.
What year would this been?
Oof. Man, that's a good question.
Oh, you're old. You can't think that far back.
I know. Yeah. I probably did that 20 years ago. So 2005, maybe. Something like that. Yeah. And so I wasn't good at. I've never been good at body work. Obviously, you could tell. But
I wasn't gonna say anything.
Not my strong
That's
point.
why you're in the rat rods.
Right. Exactly. So when it was time to paint the motorcycle, I had a buddy that worked at a body shop, and so we just swapped some labor. I did some mechanical work for him.
That's
and
always
he
nice.
painted my bike for me. Yeah. So
Cool.
Yeah. So I've always liked customizing stuff and making it different and making it my own and making it one of a kind that nobody else has.
So did you do that with the family car?
Yeah, I do. Yep. My wife's SUV, it's sitting on big tires and it's got push bar on the front. Like hers is actually a retired.
Cop, military.
It's a retired cop car. It's Border
Fire
Patrol.
truck.
That's what I was looking for.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's retired Border Patrol from the
All right.
Canadian side. I wish it was from the southern border, so it'd be rust free. But no, this is Canadian Border Patrol in Minnesota, so it is rusty underneath.
Oofta.
But she's had it for oofta's right. Mm-hmm. She's driven it now, I think 7 years, and she loves that thing.
Cool.
So But I changed.
Does she just let you do
customize
it? Like okay.
Yeah.
Is it like one day she goes out and she's like, hey, my truck's like 6 inches taller. You want to tell me something, or do you have to run it by her?
I'll maybe tell her I'm up to something. Yeah. But she's a really good sport about it.
That's cool.
So, yeah.
Awesome.
She's awesome.
So how did you get into cars? Like motor in general?
Yeah.
You started racing.
Yeah.
So that
It probably goes all the way back to being really little. My dad would take my brother and I. There's only two kids in our family, and Dad was taking us to monster truck shows and tractor pulls, anything that was happening at that.
In the air? Is that here, Minnesota?
Yeah. Yep.
So you
I was born and raised in Minnesota.
Where did they used to be? Met Center, Metrodome.
the
Is it the
Metrodome.
Met Center?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you remember Truckosaurus?
Yeah.
It's for sale on Facebook Marketplace for 1.5 right now.
Serious?
I'm
It's the one
not
that
kidding.
Picks up a truck and takes a chomp. Yep.
I am
remember
not
that.
kidding. It's
Flame shootout.
Yes.
Yep.
It's for sale right now.
Awesome.
We
That'd
should
be a
go buy
write-off.
it.
We should do that for
Oh,
the podcast.
yeah. I'll see if my wife's okay with that. She's
awesome.
not.
So yeah, that's really where it started. Was just Dad taking us. My dad was kind of a gearhead, also, but he wasn't building projects himself. He had really cool 68 Le Mans when he was in high school. But my dad is kind of a purist. He really likes things to be stock. He really, really likes everything to be original. And I, maybe partly out of rebellion, I want to change everything about it.
So when you say purist, do you mean like by number? Like
Close.
the hoses have to be, like all that kind of like.
He definitely appreciates that. So when we go to car shows, he was the guy that was looking at, to me, the old man car that had, Mopar air in the Mopar spare tire.
Sure.
Kind of numbers matching everything.
Numbers matching. That I was
thinking.
thinking.
He really, really likes things that are stock and just leave it alone. Just leave it alone. It's great the way it is. And to me, that was like, That's gross. It should be the customs. It should be the rat rods. It should be the stuff that's slammed to the ground, big pipes, big blower sticking out of the hood. Like, I loved the craziness and the weirdness of it.
You think that'll change as you get older? I mean, you're old now, but like right now, I can see myself kind of appreciating that.
Yep.
Actually, like, this is the way it was.
Right.
Because you're not ever going to get that
It's only
again.
going to be that once.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we love patina for that reason.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I can see both sides of it. I'm a little bit of both.
All right. So he was into cars.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so was my brother. How
old's your brother? Older than you, younger than you?
He's a year and a half younger than I am.
Okay.
So I'm 46, so he'd be 44 and a half.
Okay.
Now. Yep. So both my brother and I went to school to be mechanics. And
where was this?
Where?
Yeah, where?
Mankato, Minnesota is where I went to school, and he went to Dunwoody Institute up in the
metro. Yeah, no. Yeah. Yep.
So
he wanted to go the expensive route.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm still a mechanic. I wrench full time for a living now, and my brother has since become a welder and a pipe fitter at a plant.
Nice.
So yeah. But we both still work on cars all the time for friends, and we do our own projects.
And your relationship to your dad, good one?
It's good.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. Like I see my dad a couple times a month, and
he brought you into the world, but
right.
brought you into the car world.
Yeah.
And I always find that interesting. That relationship as it progresses and stuff like that.
He helped me with the wood on the bed of this truck. He's got some welds on it. He helped quite a bit more with the rat rod build that we just got done with last summer. That also has some wood. Actually, the same wood that was used in this project is used on that rat rod.
Oh, cool.
And so he helped me with a lot of fitting that, and the floor of that rat rod. He built that. So, yeah.
So do you want to intentionally carry that down to your kids? You're just going to let them?
Yeah.
Like, how are you pushing it?
I try not to push my kids into it unless they want to be a part of it. Jacob, my oldest, he's 24. He has his own project, and he would like to get a good enough job that he can then have a shop of his own just for projects and just for fun stuff. And so, yeah, it's something that he and I have a special connection on with that.
Okay.
Maybe two of my kids dabble with it a little bit, but they're not nearly as hardcore. Sure. And that's fine. I'm totally fine with that. It's okay. Yep. So
nice. Yeah. So it's a family affair. Yeah. This is, for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, okay. You pinstripe. No, let's pinstripe. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
That's art. That's art.
Yes.
How'd you get into pinstriping?
Good question.
Okay.
My mom has been an art teacher my whole life. My dad is a contractor, so my dad
what did he do specifically?
Kitchen and cabinet remodeling. Okay. That's his specialty. So I grew up being very hands-on and being encouraged to just try things. And so artwork was something I grew up around all the time, probably a lot like you. No? We'll talk about that.
We'll get into that, yeah.
Yeah, okay. But pinstriping specifically, I started in about 2016.
Okay.
Just because I was a fan of it. I thought it was cool, and I thought, I want to just try this. A friend of mine bought me a pinstriping kit for my birthday, and I tried it once, and I got frustrated with it. I put it away, didn't touch it again. Yep. And there's pretty common.
Yep.
And so someone encouraged me a while later, saying, "Hey, do you ever do this? Do you ever pinstripe?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I told him that I have a kit, but I'm not good at it. I'm like, "Well, can you just try this for me? Just try it." And so I dabbled with it a little bit more, and I started watching YouTube videos on how to do this. And I fell out into the rabbit hole of watching masters of pinstriping on YouTube, watching how they did what they did, and I was like, I can totally try that. I know what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. When they're talking about thinning and they're talking about paletting and things like this. Like, well, yeah, I mean, that's what you do. So I decided to just give it another shot and fell in love with it. And that was pretty close to the time that I started getting into trucking, because a lot of things were happening in life that all kind of fit together later on, and you don't know how they're gonna cross paths. But I did not realize that once I started pinstriping, what a demand there was for it, and how hungry people are for that.
It was rare.
That artwork.
Like, it's not.
Yeah, exactly. There's not that many people doing it.
It's a craft that seems to be carried on.
Yep.
That needs to be carried on.
Exactly. And there's actually a lot of similarities with pinstriping and tattoos, where the master would traditionally teach the apprentice. It gets passed down from master to apprentice. There's a rich tradition of that, and it's slowly kind of dissolving with people like me, because I did not learn from a master. I learned from multiple ones online.
On YouTube.
On YouTube.
YouTube is the master.
Yes, yep. And so anyway, it became fun, and the more I was doing it for trucker buddies, and the more I started to post about it on Facebook or Instagram, or I didn't have the YouTube channel yet, but there was a lot of people that were like, wow, this is awesome. Can you do something for me? And then I thought, well, I'm giving this away for free. I should probably start charging something for it. But you know what that's like, to feel like there's no way this is good enough to like ask people for money for this, but like maybe I should.
Have you been to shows with it? Like, do you sell panels? Do you set up? Do you do any vending?
I have done that some.
How'd that go?
Yep. It was okay. It got to be to the point that I started to not enjoy it, because there was such a push for it, and I definitely have imposter syndrome, where I don't think my stuff is nearly as good as that guy's or that guy's or that guy's.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
So
right now, at this moment.
Yeah, I'm like, there's no way I could. Yeah. So other than doing it for people and making content out of it, I started to just kind of pull the reins back on how much I was doing it, so that it could still stay fun. I wanted it to be something that I enjoyed doing, instead of it becoming something that I had to do, and then I'd start to dread it.
What paint do you use? Because I know I'm One Shot.
Sure.
Is what I was familiar with.
Yes.
But Alpha 6, is
Alpha
that
6
right?
enamels. Okay. Yep. It's made in Detroit. I was using One Shot like everybody else was, and Alpha 6 approached me and said, hey, why don't you try our stuff? Can we just send you some, see what you think of it? I was like, okay, no problem. And for me, the paint itself did exactly what One Shot did. I wasn't unhappy with any of it, but I was really impressed with their black. It was the blackest black I've ever used. It wasn't dark gray and it wasn't blue. It was black. And this is going to sound a little finicky or picayune. I don't know if that's the right word. It's going to sound funny, now. But the packaging and the flip top of the plastic squeezable cap was amazing, because One Shot is in metal cans.
It's a paint can.
And once you open it up, you're exposing it.
Yep.
And I really like that One Shot had a flip cap. You could squeeze out just what you need, pallet that. Put
you
the
mean
cap
the
back
Alpha
on.
6 had the flip cap?
Exactly. Yep. Did I say that backwards? Okay.
You might have.
Yeah. So One
Who's
Shot
paying attention?
One Shot has the metal cans and is exposed to air. And Alpha 6 has the flip top.
Brushes.
Yep.
What are you using for brushes?
I use MAC brushes.
Okay.
Yep. That's all I've really ever toyed around with. I've tried some synthetics as far as bristles.
Because what are they made out of?
They're made out of blue squirrel hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
pretty
weird.
Cool. Traditional. Yeah.
Yep.
And the wood handles, they're always handmade. The ferrules are very specific the way they're wound. There's a left hand and a right hand. There's a specific shape to them. And the tradition of all that stuff was part of the fun of learning about, like, oh, wow, this was a world I didn't know anything about. And as I started to delve into it, it was a lot of fun. And to just be willing to just jump in and try it, and you're going to suck at it at first. Just like anybody that picks up a guitar, you're not good at guitar the first time you try it. You have to just keep working at it. It's the same thing with pinstriping. Like, your lines are going to look like crap for a long, long time. You got to just keep at it. Yeah.
I tried it. It was terrible.
Yeah. And just like anything that you have to keep practicing at, I get frustrated for about the first half hour or 45 minutes when I sit down to stripe, and I have to work. I have to like knock the rust off, and I have to get better at it. Just, get that muscle memory back and get the feel back for it.
But you teach kids though, right? Don't you go to some tech school and show kids how to do it?
I have. Yep. I'm friends with the local Votech. Actually, my alma mater, the school that I graduated from, they approached me and said, hey, we heard that you pinstripe. We saw it online. Would you be willing to come in and teach the body shop kids how to pinstripe? I'm like, sure, no problem. Nice. You know, I'm definitely not a master at this. I'm just a student myself, but I'll show you guys what I learned so far.
Sure.
You know, and so the first time that I did that class, I just kind of showed up with my own stuff and let the kids try it with my brushes and my paints, and it went pretty good. It was fun. And then they asked me the following year. I'm like, okay, I guess that went well enough that they want me back. And this time I approached Alpha 6 Enamels and I said, hey, I'm going to be teaching a class, and I would really like it if the students could have really high quality paints and good brushes. The school was willing to ask the kids to pay some money up front to be a part of the class, which also, you know, imposter syndrome again. Yep. I didn't feel like I'm good enough that people have to pay $40 to come to my, like, what?
Yeah.
Like, but everybody got an actual MAC pinstriping brush, and they got 5 colors of Alpha 6 enamels.
Nice.
They got a aluminum panel that they can practice on. When you're done, you wipe it off with some mineral spirits, start over. And,
okay.
And so we just went over some of the fundamentals and the basics of how you palette and how to come up with a design that's symmetrical, and just
I've always
just
been fascinated about that. The symmetrical.
Yeah. And you know, everybody sucks at it. That's what I had to learn. It's like nobody's panel is exactly mirror image perfect, unless it's done by AI or something like that. I mean, you can get a sticker and it looks symmetrical, but it's not hand-done traditional pinstriping.
Do you line your stuff first? I've noticed. I see people use like a pen or a what would you call it?
Yeah, like a Stabilo pencil.
Something like that to get their lines down first.
I always use a center line. If I'm doing a symmetrical design, I'll always start with a center line, and it's usually a teardrop down the center.
Sure.
And then you build out from there. And I had to learn, if you're right-handed, start on the left side of your design. Do your opposite side first, and then finish on the right. Yeah, there's things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and you start to learn what works for you. Some people wear gloves, some don't. You're going to drag your pinky through your line, and you're going to have to wipe it off.
Yep.
Like, there's all kinds of stuff like that you just have to get better at as you practice.
So I know that you draw.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Where'd that come from?
My mom.
Okay.
Yeah, she would encourage us all the time to just be creative and try new things. And
like your whole, like from
as
little
far back
toddler.
as I can remember.
Okay.
Yep. And so she kept a lot of my artwork. So she's got boxes of it that, you know, like, here's when you were in kindergarten. I don't want to see that. But yeah, so she was always giving us, for Christmas presents and birthday presents, art kits and watercolors, and here's some a lot. I was the only kid in my school that knew what a kneaded eraser was.
Really?
Yeah.
You know,
stuff like that.
That's funny. Me too.
Or a tortillon, you know, for shading.
Yes. Yes.
So nobody else knew what that was.
Right.
They were like, "You're such a dork."
I remember I had a kid.
See?
I'm a jerk. My wife will be like, he's a jerk. I'm a jerk. Even in high school, this kid came up to me and I had a kneaded eraser. And he's like, oh, cool. Where'd you get that? I go, I just melted erasers down and I got this. You idiot.
See? Yeah.
Yeah.
So my mom, being an art teacher, I was in her classes all the time. So when it was time for me to teach this pinstriping class, I was definitely emulating my mom.
Sure.
You know, and it's fun how now that I'm a dad, I can look back and be like, oh, yep, I'm just like my mom in that, or I'm just like my dad in that. It's like, oh, yeah, okay, so
yeah,
full circle.
Oh, yeah. That freaks me out.
Yep.
Pinstriping, trucks, like trucking,
like semis and trucking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where does that come in, and where does your trucking life start?
Okay. So I was working full time at an automotive shop. I was racing, and
what tracks would you go to?
It was a lot of just local dirt track stuff for doing Hornet racing. Any dirt track that would have front wheel drive, 4-cylinder cars. It was the low budget way to enter racing. So a lot of times I was racing teenage kids that had been racing go-karts.
Sure.
And I'm the old guy, because that's all I can afford is driving,
just
a street
dirt?
car.
Or
just
some
dirt.
asphalt?
I did race on one asphalt track, Elko Speedway. We went on that one, and I burned up a set of tires on one practice session. I was like, whoa.
I know
that's
Elko.
Really
we
expensive.
lived in Elko.
Yeah.
So we've been there a
Yep.
couple times.
Yep. So I have been on
so
the Elko
has he.
track. Okay, cool. Yeah. So, yeah, I used the same car. I built it for asphalt and dirt just to turn left all the time. Yeah, so it's only circle track. And then our local county fair did something called the Day of Mayhem, and that was really fun because we got to do with junker cars that were basically demolition derby cars, but you would race figure eight, or you would do a chain race. Have you heard of that?
Oh,
yeah, back to back. Trailer racing.
So
Yep.
the chain racing, you're
Yeah.
talking where they put the. I've seen it where they do 3 cars,
Yes, that's fun too.
and the front car steers and the back car brakes, or
Sure.
is that?
Yep. We only did 2 cars.
Okay.
In ours. Yep. And we were undefeated 3 years in a row.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Yep. So
what did you drive or brake?
I was the lead car, so I was steering.
Steering.
Yeah, we were both on the gas the whole time.
Oh,
so,
man.
Yeah, it was a blast.
I love.
Yeah.
That's so redneck.
Yep. It's absolutely like
I
I
love
can't
it.
stop grinning
So,
when I think about it. Yeah.
Absolutely, because we would go to Elko Speedway. What was Elko's Mayhem Night?
Eve of Destruction.
Eve of Destruction.
Yep.
Yes.
School buses. See, my
Oh,
dad took us to that kind of
school bus.
stuff when we
Yes.
were little. So now I was old enough to actually like be one of the guys that's out there on the
That's
track. And I was
awesome.
Like, oh. So
Awesome.
I started just by pitting for other people that were doing demolition derby
Okay.
and stuff like that. So you start in the pits, and pretty soon you got the bug so bad it's like I could build it better than that.
I've always-
that guy's welds suck. I could do better than that. So
I've
yeah.
always loved the spectator races,
yeah.
only
See?
because nobody cared. You wanted to see a guy drive his car on the wall. That's the only thing.
Well, sure, you're there for the wrecks.
Oh, absolutely.
We had one, our local county fair, they did something called Faster Pastor, and it was local pastors. They were willing to jump in these
Dude.
put together cars, and they were pastor versus pastor, and you see who's the faster pastor. So that was a blast. Yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
Our pastor ended up on his lid. He flipped his car, and that was the end of that. That never happened again after that.
Oh, pastor. I
Yeah.
like that.
Yep. So that'd be fun to bring that back.
Yes,
But-
it has to happen.
Yep. So anyway, that's kind of you asked about trucking, but I
Trucking, yes.
was racing,
Okay.
and doing well, but I was having to find sponsors to be able to go racing because I made the promise to my wife I will not use groceries and diaper money to go do this. This is just a hobby. This is just for fun. So if I need tires or gas or whatever.
So diapers. So what were your kids' ages?
I think my oldest at the time I was racing, because I raced for probably 6 or 7 years. So we had 2 toddlers in the house. And Jacob was potty trained. Luke was maybe 3. So
And
two,
racing.
two,
Yeah, I could
3
see the
kids.
stress.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, I want to go do this every single weekend of the summer, but I can't because I can't drive too far to go do it, or I have to borrow a trailer, or, so I would choose.
And your wife is okay with that.
She was awesome.
That's awesome.
She's like, hey, wear a helmet, you get a good fire suit, you got safety belts.
Go play.
Go have fun.
Nice.
Yep, as long as you're not cutting into the budget.
Sure.
Yeah. So we set those ground rules, and I was racing a limited circuit, so it wasn't like I was out there every single weekend. I would have loved to do that, but to be able to find local businesses that would put their name on the side of my car, they would say, well, how much money do you need? And I say, well, $200. Does that sound okay? And your name's going to be in my car all season, but I'm only racing 5 events, something like that. And so I would always make sure that my car was clean and that the sponsor's name was always wiped off, didn't have mud and stuff. And if it needed to be repainted, I was out there with the roller. I almost always had a white car because I could, cover up the scratches and the dents with white, the easiest, because it was the cheapest paint at the hardware store, stuff like that. But always had a fresh looking, really good car that looked nice, even if it wasn't the fastest. But
Sure.
I did get some wins. We got some trophies, and you're talking in front of the local radio station or the local TV station, and you're saying sponsor names, and so it was fun to feel like.
Are you getting your different hats on?
Yeah.
With the sponsor hat?
Yeah,
all that?
wear your Napa T-shirt because their name's on the
Exactly,
car, and then
yep.
the next year it's CarQuest. You get a CarQuest T-shirt on, stuff like that. But yeah, so it was a blast.
How'd you get out? Why'd you get out of it?
I got out of racing because it was tougher and tougher to find sponsors to do what I wanted to do, and I wanted to keep upping, better competition. What I loved about racing was it was you're competing not only for how well you can build the car, but how well you can drive the car. So it was both. It was who's the better builder and who's the better driver. I was also in the fall helping out at the local family farm. And so this is friends of these are my in-laws, but they're also family friends. So it's like we're related, but we've been friends for a long time. And I was helping with harvest. And it wasn't just being in the tractor or being in the combine, but we had 3 semi-trucks on the farm. And I absolutely loved being behind the wheel of a semi-truck. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. And so I learned how to drive a 13-speed and an 18-speed and double clutch and do all those things and just be around diesel and sitting up high and all the things, being heavy. You know, like I'd never driven something that you feel like you're driving a train. It's like, oh, you step on the brakes and you're not
Sure.
stopping on a dime. Like it takes 3 blocks to slow that thing down because you're 80,000 pounds, you know. Like that was a new world that I love the challenge of. And I think that was part of the way that I'm put together was I love the challenge of trying to figure something out and get good at it. And after a while you feel like, okay, I did that. I'm pretty good at it. I want a new challenge now. So trucking was the new thing. I was like,
I don't know what you're talking about. I've never felt that way.
Here's something I'm going to suck at for a while. Let's try podcasting, right? Yeah. So so that's
you got any crazy stories from trucking?
From trucking? Yeah.
Yeah, what's a crazy, give me something. Besides avoiding the weight under the 52.
there was always things. I was loving trucking just as much as I loved racing, and with racing I had to pay money to go do this fun thing, and with trucking I was getting paid to do it.
Sure.
So that's why I made the transition. So I was still turning wrenches full time at a shop as a mechanic, and I got a part-time job driving a propane truck, like semi-truck, but it's got propane tank. So you're driving a bomb, basically. Okay. So go big or go home, right? Yeah. So I got my certification, not only my CDL, it's commercial driver's license, but I also got certified to be able to haul hazardous materials and things like that, which means you have to stop at every railroad crossing, and you have to make sure that no bad guys are going to steal your product because it's flammable and they could make, you know, a giant bomb by driving it into a building or something like that. So there's like extra things, extra rules that you have to follow by driving hazardous materials around. So I love the challenge of that.
So stop at railroad crossings and
Exactly.
watch out for bad guys.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
It was a lot of
Easy.
that. Yeah. And so I was trucking, but I was close to home. I wasn't out on the road for a week or 2 at a time. I was able to get a job that I would just go up to the Twin Cities 2 days a week and come right back home again. And it was extra income to be able to pay to send our kids to Christian school. And it was something that I loved.
So extra, what are you doing?
It was extra. So I was turning wrenches
Okay.
5 days a week at the shop. And then I would go trucking on Wednesday nights and all day Saturday.
You ever bring your kids with you in
I
the
did,
truck?
yeah.
Okay.
Yep, they loved it. That was one of the tricky things about the company that we work for, though, because you're hauling hazardous material for a company name. They're like, we really don't want passengers. So
I could
it was
see
the
that being
times-
bad on the news.
Yeah.
Yep.
But the times that I could take my kids with me was on the farm. So when we're hauling grain
Okay.
out of the field into the grain elevator or something like that, I could have the kids with me.
Now,
that
you
stuff. That was
had
fun.
the dump truck thing that I know nothing about. So
Okay.
I'm just saying dump truck.
Yep, that's
But-
what it was. It's called end dump
Okay.
trucking, and so it's where the semi, the tractor trailer, is separate like any other semi, but the trailer itself is the dumping part of it, and so end dump trucking is a completely different beast from most other styles of trucking. So it's not like you're backing into a loading dock. You're not strapping the load down like a flatbedder or something like that. End dump, you have a tendency to be top heavy and tip over.
Does that ever happen?
I have seen it. I've been around it. So when you ask what are some of the craziest things, it's being next to somebody and their trailer tips over. And sometimes it takes the truck over with it.
Sure, I would imagine.
Guys have gotten hurt. Yeah.
Oh.
So some of the places that we go, pulling an end dump trailer like that, you have to really, really be careful that your back 2 tires, well, it's actually 4 because you have duals, but your back tires on your trailer are where all that weight is on as the trailer starts to go up in the air. And so you have to be on really, really solid, firm, and level ground at all times. And I made a couple videos about this while I still was trucking and had the YouTube channel about life as an end dump trucker, because there's a whole learning curve that goes with it. And there's an old saying, I don't like the phrase, but the saying is, if you drive end dump, you're only one of two types of guys: a guy that hasn't tipped a trailer over yet, or a guy that has. It's yet or you will. Sure. I didn't like that phrase, so in the 6 years that I drove, I never tipped one over. Praise God. But yeah, you can tend to have a frozen load that sticks, or it's a material that tends to get jammed up, or it's too heavy on one side. There's a whole thing.
And does it go slow?
As the trailer goes up in the air.
I mean, as you're tipping. Is it kind of like a slow-mo, like,
yep,
here we go.
It's too late. And so there's times that, you'd be looking in your mirrors, or you'd be looking out your back window of the cab, and you can start to just see it, and you can start to feel it, and like, oh, put this trailer down right now, like, try and save it. And
so you've done that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
There's a few times where you're like, oh, crap, and your heart's beating, and like, it gets your adrenaline going. Yeah,
okay.
Big time. So I did almost tip quite a few times, but the style of trailer we had was frameless, where to save weight, the box of the trailer itself is the strength.
Okay.
There's other ones where the frame stays on the ground, your wheels stay on the ground, and only the box tips, but they're heavier. And so the name of the game in trucking is be as light as you possibly can, because then you can haul more and you can make more money per load.
Okay.
Haul more. So if your truck is under 30,000 pounds, then you can haul 50,000 pounds.
Makes sense.
So the more you can haul, the more money you can make.
So I saw your video where you stretched a frame?
Yes. Yep.
So there's a whole customizing trucker world out there.
That's exactly
that you're going
right.
to shortly.
Yes. So trucking and customization and hot rods, there's so much crossover, and there's so much similarity there, where guys are hopping up their semis to make them faster, more powerful, better fuel mileage, sit lower, taller stacks.
Now, are these all, like, they use these for work?
Yes.
Are some of them just trailer queens?
There are some that only go to shows, and they are only a show truck. But I would say the vast majority, 95% of these trucks that are at these shows are working class trucks. And so they show signs of where they have rock chips in the front.
Okay.
Their fifth wheels are all scraped up and full of grease, and they have to go the extra mile to get these things clean and prepped and ready for the show, because it's out there getting dirty day in and day out, earning a living.
So how did you get okay, so you're farming. Well, you're not farming, but you're driving grain trucks, you're getting into it.
Yep.
But there's a whole other level that you seem to have gotten into. You're interviewing truckers, you're writing for Large Car.
Yes.
Like
it turned into a thing, and I didn't realize that trucking would be a window into this whole, being on YouTube, being on Instagram, and just starting to interview people, that I was just doing it for fun, because I needed content for my channel that I did just for fun, and it was a small source of income. And it was a thing that was interesting to me, but it turned into being huge, and I didn't see it coming. But people seemed to like what I was doing and what I was posting, my artwork or my interviews and things like that. And then Steve from Large Car Magazine said, "Hey, I've been watching your stuff. I like what you're doing. Would you be interested in writing some articles for the magazine?" I was like, "Whoa, really? Okay, sure." And just going to truck shows, sometimes they would be out of state. Some of them were right here close to home.
Casson?
Casson, Minnesota is like my favorite show of all the year. It's end of the summer. But the biggest one is the Mid-America Trucking Show. That happens every spring, and so that's the one I'm going to actually drive my pickup
Where is
to
that?
in 2 weeks. So that's in Louisville, Kentucky. Okay. That happens every March. And that's where everybody that's been building their custom project trucks reveals their build at Matt's. And so it's like having the Super Bowl first in a way. It's like everybody goes out there and you show your project at the biggest event first, and then there's a show circuit. I mean, there's a whole thing where guys go from one show to the next, and once a month all through the summer.
Are they still working and hauling with these trucks too? Or?
A lot of them are.
Okay.
If they're going to be on the show circuit, they'll probably be in the limited mileage class. But there's different classes for all that stuff, and so there's classes for what age the truck is at. If it's vintage class, if it's a brand new truck, things like that. So and if if it's got a matching trailer, it'd be considered a combo and not just a bobtail. Like, there's a lot of different categories for that stuff.
Not my word.
Yeah.
Translating it to cars, it makes sense, but
Yes.
like,
Yep.
wow.
Exactly.
And we were cruising down to the Motorsport Expo. You were explaining all this stuff to me where they're
like
switching to, I don't know how much you want to talk about, but like,
okay. Yeah.
or what you can talk
Well,
about, but
there's-
like,
there's air ride.
Fascinating.
All these trucks have air ride, and so they're playing with the weights of their axles.
Yeah.
Because there's laws about that kind of stuff, and there was laws about the length that the truck and trailer could be. That's where cab overs came from.
Okay.
Was like, well, they wanted to be able to haul more, so they're going to have a longer trailer but a shorter tractor.
Interesting.
And so, well, let's put the engine underneath the driver. We can go higher. So that's where cab overs came from. Was necessity.
Interesting.
Yeah. So now cab overs are still around because they're cool, but
Right.
they're not necessary anymore.
I just thought it was a
laws
cool
changed.
aesthetic.
No.
No, there's function behind it. I like it. That's
so
cool.
there's a lot of history with truckers and trucking, and so that's why the similarities with the hot rod culture, custom culture, lowriders, like it's all there, you know. And so the guys that are doing paint work and polishing and engine work, machinists, the frame stretch that we did on my Kenworth that I was driving while I was pulling end dump, it was all part of, just like in racing, it's like, we could do better than that. Let's do it our way. You know?
Awesome.
And so what we did for our frame stretch is Brian went to the salvage yard and he picked out an International that was about 10 years old, that had low miles, but it had the gear ratio that he wanted in the differentials. It had good brakes on it, and we knew we were going to use that section of frame. So we chopped off the Kenworth, and that everything from the cab rearward was International. So
so
we
you
called
kept all the
front end was all the same. It was all original Kenworth to the back of the cab, and then we there's different ways, like fish plates and you know, butting the frames up together to get them to fit. It was all International from the cab back, so we called it the Kenner National.
Nice.
It was a rat rod truck. You
Nice.
know? So, yeah.
Nice.
So some guys they're very specific on the style of suspension that they have, or you know, things like that. If it sits low, they'll want a low air leaf and stuff like that. So there's advantages to all that. There's disc brakes are still kind of new in trucking.
Really?
It was
Okay.
still drum brakes for a long
Why?
time, because it's air brakes were the big thing, and trucks seem to be 15 or 20 years behind the automotive industry as far as like changes. It just takes longer to get into the heavy truck world, but a lot of the things that change in trucking are government regulation stuff. And so if the government says it has to stop within this short distance, even if you're 80,000 pounds, you have to stop in this many feet, well, disc brakes make more sense. So even though it's more expensive, they're going to switch to air disc instead of air drum. So, yeah.
government.
Government.
The government.
And emissions are huge. Like, they're choking out the diesels. So
Really?
the power that they could be making. So that's why the sweet spot in trucking really was the 70s through the 90s. And then after the 90s, regulations made it to where companies can't hardly meet the government standards anymore. So your local laws, like here in Minnesota, we can drive older trucks and still have no emissions on them. You can still blow the black smoke and you can be cool if you drive an older truck. But it's tricky in the kind of climate that we have with the rust on the roads and things like that. If you're going to drive an old truck year-round, rust is a big problem. A lot of stuff is built out of aluminum on semis, so you have the problem with oxidation of rust and aluminum being next to one another, or steel and aluminum being next to one another, and oxidation and rust and stuff.
Huh.
So, yeah, there's
Crazy.
a lot of crossover. But
so much behind the trucking thing that just
the sleeper project that we did, that was actually one of my first projects. And
sleeper
we did
meaning
the sleeper, like the bunk of the
right,
truck.
not
Yep.
like a
Yeah.
hot rod sleeper.
No.
Different kind of sleeper.
Different kind
You
of
actually
sleeper.
mean going to bed.
Yes. Yep. I needed to be able to sleep in my
Okay.
truck.
Yep.
Yeah, because sometimes I was out in North Dakota or Wisconsin, South Dakota, just away from home for one night.
Sure.
And so my boss at that time, Brian, spotted this sleeper that was in a salvage yard. And it was square, it was rare, it was old, and he and I both thought it would look really cool on this Kenworth. So we drug it home, and we sanded it all down, stripped the paint off, put a new stainless back panel on it, and it was like you were hot rodding, but only a part of it.
Sure.
was able to put that on the truck, and that's really what kind of launched the YouTube channel and Instagram and things like that, was working on stretching the frame of that truck and then putting that vintage sleeper that I built or rebuilt, on that truck, and then it just turned into pinstriping, and
it went from there.
It's like that was the first project, was the sleeper. So yeah.
Where are we at on time? I'm totally gonna edit this part out, or maybe not. I don't know. You're 55 minutes then. For real?
Wow, this goes fast,
dude.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're doing great.
50. We're an hour in. Yo.
Man.
All right.
Yeah.
How should we? Can you run a timer, just so we know?
Sure.
So I already know. Let's say we're an hour already.
Yep.
Wow.
Oh, that's a stopwatch.
This is the Patreon bit.
Okay.
That goes on Patreon for
your
$5 membership.
Is there anything back here that you want to?
Well, I want to get into.
Motorcycles, pinstriping, racing, Lester. Man, we can go deeper if you want to.
I want to know the obvious that everyone's asking.
What type of aftershave do I use?
Yes. Why are you Flannel Philip?
That's a great question. There's a cool story behind that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, do share.
Okay. So I've talked about Brian a little bit, but he was my employer while I was trucking full time. Good friend of mine, and Brian was into bicycle racing. He's an outdoors guy, but we were the type of guys that we'd go out for hikes and just be wearing whatever we're wearing day in and day out. We're wearing work clothes, grow up flannel. So when Brian would go off for a bike racing competition, he's racing against people that were wearing spandex.
Oh yeah. So
and had
when you
back.
mean bikes, you mean like strictly road bikes, like the tent? Like what are we talking bikes?
He was racing like mountain bikes on trails through woods.
Okay.
So
and not those people who are going through. Never mind.
Yeah. So Brian went off for a mountain bike race.
Okay.
And I was kind of giving him a hard time, just saying, you're racing against all those spandex guys,
sure.
Where they clip their shoes into their pedals,
that
and
gets
the
dangerous.
helmets and And I said, dude, we are way too flannel to do that. And that little phrase turned into, we were all four of us guys that were driving for Beulah at the time, we were all wearing flannel shirts. We just kind of became known as the flannel guys. So when we would go into some of these locations, it was Flannel Philip, and that just became my radio handle on Channel 19 CB radio, was just Flannel. And so when it was time to start the YouTube channel, I thought, well, that's perfect name for the channel, is just Flannel Philip. And so I kind of just leaned into something that was already happening on the CB radio. And
that's perfect.
That's what you're known
as. It flows,
as.
Flannel Philip.
Yeah. So
I think my wife was like, I don't even know his first name. Does he have a real name? Like, is his name Bob? And he just likes Flannel Philip,
Yep.
Like,
and so
sounds great.
When I was starting to pinstripe, I needed to sign my artwork somehow. And instead of signing it Philip West, I was like, well, I'll just use flannel. And it works out pretty well with a brush that you can actually make them all capital letters. And it's not that hard to get blocky letters that look flannel. So.
When are you going to start your own apparel line then for flannels? Cut organic cotton flannels.
I would love to do that. We're
Sourced
working on
locally.
it. Yes, that would be amazing. So yeah,
it's a little hippy dippy, but I'm more of a hippie than
yeah. I would love it. I love wearing vintage flannels and going into.
Do you have a favorite vintage flannel?
Yeah, I feel like I wear it way too much.
No, I mean like brand.
Oh,
is there one that you're like, oh, I want that brand? Obviously,
current ones,
what you're wearing now, but
I wear a lot of Dixon because it fits so well. I love their colors and stuff like that, but the sleeves are long enough. Anytime I have a vintage flannel,
this is awful.
The sleeves are too short.
What? Sorry. Like this?
Yeah.
This is awful.
Bingo.
Drives me nuts.
See? So unless I'm rolling up my sleeves with some of my old shirts, Dixon is the stuff that I wear the majority of the time just because it's cut to fit American guys like us. So, yeah.
And on that note, sponsor this channel.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
That would.
Dixon, we're looking at you.
Yeah. What about Pendleton? Too uppity?
I don't know if I even have one.
I'm saying it right. Pendleton, right?
Pendleton.
Pendleton flannels? Clothing?
There's Hale Speed Shop. They're a competitor for Dixon. They have some nice colorways.
Yeah.
I have friends that have Hale's.
Pendleton, yeah.
Yeah, Pendleton.
Yeah. You're going to pay, huh? I mean, sure. I'm just saying, Pendleton is like, I mean, you know, I'm willing to pay $200 for a flannel. No, I'm not.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. Dude.
Wow.
Where? Out of a trailer from some Macy's? All right, so that's the flannel story.
Yeah, that's where I got my name. Yep,
I
just
like
kind of
it.
leaned into it.
Nice.
Did we lose? Oh, you know what? I was going to mention the seats on this truck.
Okay.
They came out of a junkyard, and it was a camper that had a Dodge, like, D300 van chassis that this camper was built on, and I saw these seats, and I went, I don't know what I'm going to build someday, but I want these seats. So I actually own the seats.
You had the seats before the car.
I had the seats before the car, and they were sitting down in my basement, and they smelled so weird. And I just had them stacked on top of each other on a shelf. And so these seats I've owned way longer than anything else on this project, but took them apart, and they're actually sitting on the Crown Victoria seat frames, so it still has power seats. Because
nice.
That was one of the things that when we were deciding what we're going to keep original on the Crown Victoria was, well, it's got a power driver's seat. That'd be awesome to still keep that. So it's a old Dodge RV seat on a Crown Victoria frame. Yeah. Yep. And my daughter was a huge help in recovering those things.
Cool.
But, yeah.
I like that you had the seats before you had the truck.
Yep.
What do you have sitting around that is waiting to be a vehicle?
Yeah. Again, my wife is very patient with me. I have all kinds of just random things down in the basement right now that just waiting for the right thing. I have turbos. I have, exhaust manifolds. Planning on, like, you know, if we ever have another V8 project that we want to put a turbo on, let's use the manifolds, flip them upside down, and plumb it that way. I have a lot of truck parts still, even though I don't own my own semi anymore. I had a cab over for about 3 or 4 years. I bought it, had it in storage, had good intentions of restoring this cab over, but didn't go back to it. So I do still have mirrors and a bunch of CB parts and a little bit of chrome. I have a bunch of lights. That's one of the things I'd love to do on this truck would be doing some underglow lighting on it. Because I put that on my semi, and then when I wasn't driving for Brian anymore, I took some of my parts and pieces off of that truck and brought them with me and put the truck back to stock. So anything that I changed on the Kenworth at the time, I could switch it back out. I built my own steering wheel, like rat rod. It's got connecting rods holding the hoop together, and that was one of my favorite things about having that truck was the creativity. I should back up. That was one of my things about driving that Kenworth and Brian giving me the freedom to just express myself, customize it, do whatever with the sleeper, with the interior. I had license plates all over the place. I had old vintage sign from my headliner in the truck, and just stuff that I liked, stuff that I thought was cool. I used a doorknob for my shift knob, and just nobody else was doing it, but I liked it because it was hot rod, it was rat rod, it was vintage, it was just my personality on the truck.
Sure.
And that's what so much of the custom truck world is all about, is the driver's personality coming through in the way that he changes his truck. It's not just about as much chrome or as much lights as you can possibly put on it. It's the personality. And so Brian gave me a lot of freedom to be able to do that. And when it was time for me to go back to turning wrenches full time and work on cars as my day job, I put the Kenworth back to stock. So stock steering wheel, stock shifter, stock seat, stock headliner again, and just stored all those things. So those pieces from the Kenworth project are still downstairs in a box.
Waiting for something?
Just waiting for something. So some of it ended up on this project, some of it ended up on Lester the rat rod, and just kind of picking and choosing because your personality is always coming out in interesting ways.
What is that about us? Like, see, I cannot leave anything alone.
See?
My
Yep.
wife, I think, hey, I'm surprised. So she has a 2014 Mitsubishi.
Okay.
I'm
Yep.
surprised that thing isn't lifted with a rack on it or something. Like, I haven't touched that car. But anything I have, I cannot leave it alone.
Mm-hmm.
Why? And what's interesting is some people think you can't do that. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're like, whoa, you can do that to a car? I'm like, yeah, go for it.
See?
Like,
Kind of back to my dad. My dad being the purist and leave it alone. You know, you're gonna wreck it. You know, it's like, no, let's change it because it's cooler that way. It's more fun. And maybe I would regret it again later. But I was always changing stuff on my BMX bike.
Oh, sure.
And my skateboard and anything. I was customizing it. Just it's the artist in you that just has to express yourself in weird, zany ways. And after a while, you get bored with it. Or you want to change it. It's like, yeah, that's what it's there for. So your truck, your car, it's your canvas, right? And it's just,
yeah.
ways to express yourself.
I always think, maybe I'm wrong, correct me on this if I'm wrong, that you don't choose the car. Like,
Yeah.
how do I put this?
Your dragon chooses you.
Is that from a...
You're a nerd.
I'm not a nerd.
That's from
I'm
from a
total nerd.
movie.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the movie with
How to Train Your Dragon, or is that it?
that too?
I don't know.
Avatar. The movie Avatar.
I saw it.
Your dragon creature chooses you.
Nah, I don't know.
Anyway.
But
Yeah.
I think that you were dead. I think it's in that.
Is it-
Yeah.
Is that it?
How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah.
Does say that.
Mm-hmm.
What I was really trying to say was the vehicle that someone drives is definitely an extension of that person,
Bingo.
whether they say it isn't or not.
Bingo.
You drive a Subaru, I'm pretty certain I can kind of figure you out. You drive a Tesla, you're conflicted right now.
Absolutely.
But you know what I mean? Like,
For sure. That's one of the things I have to write about in the magazine when I'm looking at photos of this individual's truck, and all I have is a spec sheet to go off of. Like, it's the facts about who this person is and their vehicle and photos, and I have to put that into words that are interesting. Is talking about that person's personality coming through in the decisions that they made. Like, why did you choose those switch extensions? What is it that made you choose that visor? Why those wheels?
right?
What is it about having heavy metal flake on the roof that you like? Why is that?
Why
That's
is-
interesting. That's an interesting choice.
I think
Like,
the whole
talk
thing's.
about that.
I mean,
Yeah.
in hot rods, yes, but just in life,
Sure.
like the
Sure.
every Joe going down 52,
Mm-hmm.
there's a reason they picked that vehicle, and I find that interesting.
Like, oh, I like the cup holders.
Yeah, I've
It's like,
I've
oh,
gotten in
that's the
trouble
reason.
before for like, we rolled up on a truck one time and it was decked out a certain way, and I go, I can tell you, this is probably gonna be bad. This is where it gets us kicked off YouTube. I'm like, I could tell you the ethnicity of that person.
Oh, sure.
And they're like, that's racist. I'm like, pull up next to him, and they're like, okay, fine, you're right.
Well-
Like it just cultures have a certain aesthetic,
Absolutely.
and I love it.
You can go into just about any store and you can look at that pickup truck parked out in the parking lot, and I can tell
And
you
find
who
the person
I
inside?
can find the person inside.
Yep.
Like, yep. I know
I've
what
actually
you
done
drive.
that. I think I've
Yeah.
actually think I've seen vehicles around. I'm like, it's that
Profiling?
person. Yo, totally.
Yeah. And
Yep.
I think that's okay. You're not. That doesn't make you racist. It's fun.
It's just the
fun
way
to
it is.
profile. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh. Where are we at? I mean, what else do we want to cover? Man, time flies.
Time goes really fast.
Whew.
You're in an hour and a half.
Wow. Are we? Oh.
We didn't really talk. Like, the Crown Victoria is completely stock. I haven't changed anything about, like, it's Crown Victoria.
It's a police car, though,
It's
right?
a police car.
So it's
Yeah.
built.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's got limited slip differential, four-wheel disc brakes, overdrive transmission, air conditioning, all the things that you would want to do to a vintage classic pickup truck were already done. That's why we chose Crown
Yeah.
Victoria on this thing. But I haven't changed it. Like, you can do stuff to a Crown Vic to make it faster and more powerful. I would love to put a supercharger on it. I'd love to put cams in it. You know, it'd be awesome to get some performance suspension on it, because they make some really, really cool suspension stuff for Crown Vics. But you got to pay to play, and I love what it already does.
This is great.
Yeah.
Why? I mean,
Exactly. I built it to be a cruiser.
yeah.
And it's already been on a number of different cruises and events, and I've taken it to shows, and because I really truly didn't care about what my door gaps look like or anything
Right.
like that. It's like, it's okay, I don't care. It's just an old beater farm truck.
Yep.
And that to me made it the perfect build for me because it is my personality coming through on it. And its imperfections are part of what makes it perfect for me. And there's definitely more things that I'd like to do to it. I would like to put carpet in it. I would like to...
Carpet's overrated.
I know. It's got sound deadening in it, just because I had a sound deadening brand reach out to me and
Sure.
say, hey, you know that video that you put up a week ago where you did like the cheap way to do sound deadening, and I was using roofing material. I thought, oh, perfect. I'll make a video all about how to do it on a budget because I want sound deadening, but I don't want to spend a lot of money on it. So I went to Lowe's and I picked up a bunch of, tar roofing material with the sticky stuff. I laid all that down. I was all proud of myself. And they said, that's actually really toxic. And if you breathe that stuff in when your floor gets hot from your exhaust, you're breathing in some nasty fumes. Your kids are going to be in there. You really don't want that stuff. And so I threw the ball back in their court and I said, interesting. I didn't know that. I will rip it up and I will put your product in my truck if you'll send it to me. And they did.
Nice.
So that's kind of, how that worked. And so
Did you read
Second
Art
Skin.
of the Deal? Is that where you learned that from? Did Donald
No,
Trump
I
teach you that in
don't.
his book or anything?
Probably should have read that. I didn't. I don't know. But
Just wondering.
yeah, so it worked out. So I got another week of work. I had to use dry ice to get the old junk out of there. It's a terrible job. Made a huge mess and took a lot of time, but I ended up with this giant tar ball that was the size of a basketball.
A toxic tar ball.
Toxic tar ball. Ripped all that out, put Second Skin in there. It's made in USA. It's non-toxic at all. It's
Nice.
got the safety, it's like fire retardant. It's good stuff. So I would like, not that I want to cover up Second Skin, but I would like to be able to have a matching carpet inside the truck someday.
Yeah.
But, truck's 80% done and I drive it this way and it's fun.
Cool.
But,
Yeah. Awesome.
yeah.
Love it.
Thank you.
Well,
I think we covered just about everything.
I mean, and if
but
we didn't, we'll do this again.
We'll leave some mystery.
So, because you're going to build another car.
Oh, for sure.
What's in the future? Don't know yet. Hasn't spoken to you.
Yeah, I don't know what mine's going to be. My third son, who is 18, he has been jonesing to own this truck since we started
This
building
one.
it. He loves this
Okay.
specific truck, and he wants to buy Curtis Lowe from me. And so we already set the dollar amount while we were still building this thing. And I said, if you will pay this much for the truck, I want it to stay in the family, but it will be your truck then.
Sure.
And so he wants to, drive it for high school prom, and he wants to, get married in it, and, that's going to be his deal. So I'll use that money to fund the next project when it's time. So, yeah.
When it
But-
speaks to you.
Yeah, for sure. I would love to build a Mustang for my wife. She's always loved the 64 Mustang fastback. Yep, that's her sweet spot. So I'd love to do that, but I don't know. Yeah,
Nice.
there's always possibilities. I love going to car shows and looking at something and saying, I think that's cool, but I would change this and I would change that.
Oh, yeah,
That's a different
right.
wheel.
Yep.
It's not. So it's fun to be able to have the creativity to be able to know what I would do instead. But I can admire what someone else has built and appreciate it, but say I would do things differently.
Customize it.
Yeah, customizing. So once the budget's there, yeah, we'll definitely build something more.
Cool.
But yeah.
Love it. Well, thank you.